Not enough time in between the quick start and the rest of everything else. Start this. Yeah, maybe how do you get some, how do you get into it? After this starts? Yeah, let's just go down. Good morning, everybody. It is session 14. We're doing Win the Buyer. We're going to do Win the Seller on Friday. And then a reminder that next Monday and Wednesday, we will be off and we'll pick up with 16 on the following Friday. So we will be here for Win the Seller this Friday, and then we'll be off next Monday and Tuesday. Zoe and I are traveling. Let's get into it. Don't forget, if you got questions, unmute. Let us know what your deep thoughts are. That's what we're here for. We're into the transaction pillar, right? We talked about being the real estate expert. We talked about lead generation, everybody's favorite. Talked about lead follow-up. Now we're into talking about win the buyer, win the seller, working with buyers and sellers, make and receive offers, negotiate offers, get to the closing, and then plan your future. So lead gen, lead follow-up, transaction. And again, in that lead follow-up phase, we also want to remember there is lead follow-through. So when I say lead generation, what do you think about? When I say lead generation, what have you been doing for lead generation? Anyone can answer. And it's a small room, so it's going to be Miles or Paul.
Hey, Paul.
Morning. Oh, I got to actually hit the volume so Paul can chirp in if he needs to. Hang on a second. Go ahead, Miles, you can go.
You know, at this time, it's been mostly conversational. Everywhere I go, had multiple conversations at the bank yesterday.
Yep.
Talking about accounts. Met a woman who actually transitioned back to my family about 50 years ago.
Oh.
And made a connection there, and just continuing the conversation wherever I can.
Yeah, good. Yeah, naturally and unapologetically, right? We don't want to be salesy, but we have to remind, especially, and most of us are coming from other careers, and when people just think they know what you do, if we don't get a chance to bring up and start to remind them that we do something else, we're never going to get their business. No one wants to be a secret agent. I mean, people do it all the time, but it's not helpful. Paul, what about you?
Yeah, similarly, mentioned the party I was at recently, just met a lot of new people there. Everyone I meet, I just kind of, you know, I'm very patient with it, but I like to try and mention it if I can without being salesy.
Sure. So lead gen, lead follow-up, once we get permission from them to stay in a business conversation, once we have their contact information, figuring out what they're looking for. And if they're not looking for anything of value from us, that would be lead follow through. We're just going to continue a 36 Connect to remind them that we're still here and we're happy to help when the time arrives. Somebody just talked about, I think it was yesterday during Fight Club, Melissa Simpson. I'm happy to pick on her and tell everybody that this happened to her because it's funny. It's not funny, but I'm glad it happened because she'll never let it happen again. She starts talking to this lead ages ago, and they're having conversations. And it finally gets to a point where the woman's transactional and Melissa's nowhere to be found. Melissa's conversation last week started with, you know, hey, I'm glad I got a hold of you. How you doing? Great. She goes, where have you been? She just bought and sold. Yep. Yeah, I said, as your coach, I love that for you because it's never going to happen again. You will figure out a way to make sure that never happens again. And this is about, you know, making sure that we are hyper clear too. And I'm going to tell my Matt Rivard story, which is painful, but I've been through enough therapy that I'm going to tell my Matt Rivard story because I think it's important for you guys to hear. Anybody driving around New England, certainly New Hampshire, Massachusetts, my dear friend Matt Rivard that I grew up with owns JP Rivard Trailer Sales. It's his dad's company. He took it over. So if you're driving past an 18-wheeler, I dare you to look at the mud flaps. I guarantee that 9 out of 10 trucks are gonna have JP Rivard trailer sales on the mud flaps. And then when you see that for the rest of your life, you're gonna remember the story, and hopefully this never happens to you. So I know people join teams. And when you join a team, sometimes you can be designated to a certain role within the sales process. I joined in 2010. Nathan was stepping out of business. JB and I were going to step in. JB was lead list, I was lead buyer specialist. So what did my business card say? Timothy C. Lindsay, lead buyer specialist. Do you think the civilians know what the hell that means? You know how much friggin' time I wasted explaining what a lead buyer specialist was? Conversely, I had my license because I grew up in Massachusetts. I had my license in New Hampshire, Maine, and Mass. Was that on my business card? No, I decided to put restrictive information on my business card, not expansive information. So my wife, God bless her, is home, and this is years ago, on the face space. And she yells to me, she's like, oh, it looks like Maddie and Melissa moved to Londonderry. I'm like, okay. So she's texting back and forth in direct message with Melissa. You know, Melissa's yelling upstairs to Maddie. Janina Lindsay's asking about us moving, you know, how uncomfortable for them, right? Because I didn't do my job, right? Don't forget, I didn't do my job. So Janina and Melissa are exchanging DMs on Facebook. And ultimately, it was Matt and I didn't think Tim would come all the way over here. I mean, Maddie and I grew up in Chelmsford. They sold Nashua. They moved to Londonderry. But I'm going to remind you, your friends might think that you're only licensed to sell in your town. I know most Americans probably aren't that uninformed. I almost said stupid. Uninformed. But we don't know that. And for my friend Maddie to think that I wouldn't drive back to Nashua, right over the border from where we grew up, to help him sell that, and then help him buy in Londonderry. $1.2 million in volume. The Nashua house was about 4. The one in Londonderry was about, I think it was 6 or 8. Yeah. So the other thing she said, we weren't sure that Timmy would come all the way over here. And Maddie thought he only worked with buyers. So, and I don't say this to fly in the face of your rainmaker, your team lead, if anybody's on a team and they're actually designated in a certain role. What I will remind you is at the time, Nathan, do you think Nathan and JB would be upset if I came back and said, hey, I got a listing in Nashua and a buy side in Londonderry? So we have to just tell people that we're in real estate and that we have a team of people. Because otherwise, and this goes for when you're picking properties, since we're talking about buyers. If you're working with a buyer and they want some super specific things, less is more. Because if I fill out the listing card for you and your family, and it has to be a stone hearth, wood burning fireplace, we're going to find that house? What if we find a house with a big enough space that later you could put in a faux stone hearth with a gas insert that looks like a wood burning fireplace? But there's a big enough wall in the living room that we can do that later, right? We're going to remind our buyers that we're looking for the canvas that they can paint their life on, not the perfect home, which doesn't exist. You will never have 100% home. You'll rarely get a 99% house. And even when you help somebody build the house, they dig the hole, pour the foundation, do the whole thing. Sat with the builder, sat with the architect. They're still going to be done and be like, nah, it's still missing something. Because it's impossible to have 100% house. But please don't have restrictive conversations when you're talking about what you can do in real estate. Just talk about the fact that you're in real estate and you can solve all the world's problems. So you don't have a JP Rivard trailer sales moment. Yes, I hope you all see one this weekend in traffic. You'll be like, there's Timmy's thing. There's Timmy, yeah. And then when you see one, picture me lying under the truck, because that's what I wanted to do that day when I found out. Oh, boy. So we talked about, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, it kind of goes back to Nate's comment about marketing last week.
Oh, yeah.
Marketing. in-
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
Different areas. and
Yep.
Just, world is your oyster if you take it.
Yeah,
ultimately.
Yeah, nobody owns anything. Hey, bud.
Boy.
So we talked about A buyers. Right, they're ready to go. They want to go shopping yesterday. I'm going to talk about getting the appointment. And we want to do that as soon as possible. Well, no, I'm going to talk to them on the phone more. We don't want to keep selling them on the phone. We don't want to keep talking to them on the phone. We want to set an appointment, get in the room with them. If they're at that point, which we should be able to suss out as we have enough conversations. But getting to meet with somebody. And the easiest gateway drug to do that is getting them to meet with the lender too, right? And not even meet, but just, hey, I'm gonna connect you with Brad so you can get pre-approved. And we'll talk about that whole conversation. Preparing them for the buyer consult, preparing yourself for the buyer consultation. Conducting it, getting the signed buyer agreement. And then we'll do some recaps. Questions before we get started?
Just on the preparing for the consultation.
Yeah.
Is there recommendation or process about pre-qualifications before that meet at the table? Signing contract to work together, or just kind of just in the beginning of the process?
The only thing you're gonna want to do is make sure that they've and this could happen simultaneously, that they've actually met with Brad or somebody.
Yeah.
Like they're willing to do that.
Yeah.
But we will talk about the 4 things you should have in their file before you get in the car and start showing them stuff. And then above and beyond that, you'll see baked in here too, and it's all in command. There's a whole deck for a buyer consultation packet and a listing consultation packet. It's all baked into command. You can go in, obviously gonna want to change the picture. The girl's beautiful, but like I'd change the picture. It'll be a massive letdown when my face shows up. Yeah. Oh, Veronica, you're horrible looking. Come on in. Yeah. Yeah. So Gary Keller, the right approach to close for a meeting is the only approach. Just ask for it. We talked about just using that language to wake people up, right? They want to go shopping. Yeah, we want to start looking at properties. Hey, I love that. I love that we're getting a chance to talk today. I just had an appointment open up. Do you want to go look at some of properties today? You want to get started today? Start using the today language, because you'll very quickly find out where they're actually at. We want to get started. What does that mean? We're going to list our house in the spring. Did that mean March 21st, vernal equinox? Does that mean when the snow melts? Do you want to start in the spring? Do you want to be moved in the spring? Clarity's power. We're going to keep asking questions. So the 7-step buyer service cycle. Getting the leads and getting them to appointments, leads to appointments. There's probably not anyone that could ever tell me that they have too many leads. We might have some teams that are writing checks to aggregators and they're getting a bunch of leads. One of the biggest headaches for any rainmaker, any team lead, is they probably have a bunch of leads and their team is not actually calling the leads. Because one member of the team called one lead, it was a bad phone call, and they said, all the leads are bad. All the leads are bad. I'm not calling any more leads, they're bad. We want to obviously prepare for the buyer consultation, getting those leads to appointments. We're going to talk about that conversation, getting them to sit down with us. Preparing for that. It's all baked in command. You don't have to worry about after the buyer intake sheet when you're sitting with them. They're going to come in and fill out paperwork. Maybe you're going to do it online. Maybe you're going to 2-step it and you're going to have them come in to meet with you. They're going to fill out paperwork, and you're also going to tell Brad that you've got somebody meeting you here at 2 o'clock. He's going to walk by magically at about 2:20. Oh, there's Brad. Come on in. Brad comes in because they haven't called Brad yet. And you'll get that quite a bit. You connect them with Brad. And then you check with Brad. Brad's like, no, I haven't heard back from the ones you yet. Right. And that should be your first red flag. If somebody's ready to go and they're serious and they're not cash, or they're getting the pre-approval from the lender they want to work with, I completely appreciate that. If they don't have a local relationship, tee them up with somebody that you know and love and trust. And I'm always going to say Brad first because it's just idiot proof, right? He does a great job. He's been in business with Nathan forever. And if they get pre-approved with Brad and they don't want to move forward with him, that's fine too. But they've got to get a piece of paper that says that we can execute on the contract. Or you shouldn't be taking yourself away from your family to go drive around with them, unless you want to be on Dateline, right? It's just stupid. Don't do that. Don't do it. And I did it. Don't get me wrong. When, going back to when JB and I were taking over Nate's business, when the phone rang and somebody was calling on one of our listings, I got in the car and went and met them. And you create rapport at the property. But it wasn't before I had a conversation and made sure that they were dead serious and, pre-approval, proof of funds. I had the paperwork with me at the house. Oh, we're not really, we just wanted to see this house. We're not really ready to get started. Okay, so you want to buy the house? I mean, this was beaten into me my name. Do you want to buy this house? Oh, no, we're not ready yet. Well, all right, so Mr. Jones, I'm confused because 45 minutes ago when you called my Portsmouth office, you were ready. I went full asshole mode. Like I didn't pull any punches with that because you can say it and be very candid and care-filled and professional. All right, I hear my mom in my head all the time, Timothy, it's not what you say, it's how you say it, and I just think very matter of factly. Oh, I mean, because I was trying to ask you if you could meet me at 2 today. You wanted me to drop everything and get here, which I did, Mr. Jones. And now you're telling me that we're pumping the brakes. I'm sorry. Only had 3 espressos and some cocaine this morning. Bring me up to speed. Where are we? Yeah, where are we? Very confused. Yeah, story changed very quickly. And it's because we are dropping the conversation about them having an honest conversation with somebody about their credit. That is a red flag to me. 1000%. You have a grown ass person in America that uses the word ding and credit between 2 periods, that means their credit's already dinged. And I'm not going to waste any more gas money or emotional capital thinking that they just forgot. They're definitely going to do it, because we're wasting their time. Never mind my time, because if our property had a decimal point in it, I was going to get in the car in the middle of lead gen to go meet these people. Let's get it close, right? And then I get out there and they're just idiots. So don't deal with the idiots. Don't deal with the stupid. You're going to run into the stupid. You don't have to deal with them. That's a choice. So the buyer consultation, at this point, we know what they're looking for. So we're going to help them find that house. We're going to talk about best practices doing that too. Because you will have people that want to see 48 houses. And there's an easy way to curb that number. We're going to offer and negotiate the contract with our buyers. We're going to be very clear with them when we push the offer across the table. There are no nuances. There are no shades of gray. This is what we're asking for. Then we have to run contract to close. And then we have post-close. The closing and post-close. I believe that's what it says under number 7. If it doesn't, I'm going to fire myself. 3, 2, 4.5. What is happening? Post-close. Okay. I keep my job. The lead funnel. And again, what is an A buyer? The A buyer is ready to go. The A buyer is the person I would leave my desk for on a Tuesday morning to go meet. So quite honestly, it's very rare I was like dropping everything and running to the car. But my question to your point, what should be in the file? As I'm taking them through the buyer intake sheet, and we talked about that we've seen that on the slide deck, all the questions we should be asking them, making sure they understand that before I go meet them at a property, and this became practice. I don't know if you guys saw, and I joke about Dateline, which I shouldn't. There was a girl in Arkansas or whatever, and it happens more often than we hear about, that went to a showing and they found her later in a trailer, right? Like in a JP Rivard trailer, right? Yeah. So people on your team should know where you're going, male or female. And because I had a horrifying time at it was over on 10 Rod Road in Rochester. We were showing Colonial with a farmer's porch. It was just me. The kid sent through his proof of funds. He was gonna go cash. I think his uncle was helping him. Well, he pulls up, his uncle gets out, his other uncle gets out. Like, I'm like, oh, I fucking die. I'm dying today. I'm going to die today. Like 9 guys get out of a clown car. And I stayed on the farmer's porch. This is back when I'm running marathons and I had lost all my weight. I'm like 165 pounds. I'm like out on the farmer's porch. I'm like, yep, lights right around the corner. I'm not going in there. You got a purty mouth. Yeah, this is where it ends. This is where it ends, right? Yeah, so, but I got proof of funds from him and I got his license from him. He was on the up and up. Showing up with 85-year friends was not my favorite. They were good dudes. But getting out of the car, yeah, it was a greasy bunch. It was a greasy bunch. But we always want to ask, and just to protect ourselves, I'm going to ask for, and I'm having this conversation, and I'm just going to say, so, who are the decision makers going to be at the property? Like whoever's going to be making the purchase, right? Because earlier, when I was on the phone, Mr. Lindsay said that his wife Janina was going to be part of the conversation. And then when I say, and he's like, oh no, actually she's not going to make it, she's sick. Or, oh no, actually we got divorced 10 minutes ago, right? Like suddenly his wife's not anywhere to be found. That should be a red flag. The hair on the back of your neck is your sixth sense. That is the universe telling you don't do something stupid. And anybody that has any brain in their head, when a realtor says, before we meet at the property, and blame it on the office, always blame it on the office. Before we meet at the property, office policy for me is that anybody that's going to be meeting at the property needs to send through their license. Shouldn't be an issue. I would have no problem sending my license through to you and my wife, right? Here's Janina Lindsay, here's Timothy Lindsay. We'll see you there in 2 hours. You know, when we start doing this stuff and we're like, oh, I'm just going to go run over there and it's just you. And if you pull up and they're still in the car, I've done this. You know, you get out and just take a picture of the license plate. What are you doing that for? File. Like if I have nothing to hide, I shouldn't be worked up. Shouldn't be worked up at all. But when you start to get pushback on why do you need my license? And you could probably intercept that with, if they're sending over proof of funds or pre-approval, that means Bradley just talked to them and their credit's good, right? Could you have good credit and still be a serial killer? Yes. Get their license. And yeah, there it is. Anything's possible. And yes, the I have a dream speech. Yes. This was probably my last summer selling, and myself, the other buyer's agent on my team, and a friend of ours, it's back in a simpler time. We'd go to closings, we'd go to the Portsmouth Brewery. We wouldn't leave the Portsmouth Brewery, right? But this other girl had a showing over on Woodbury, and she was talking about it and how she was sort of uneasy. Not uneasy, but she's like, yeah, like the guy's been really weird with the communication. So we leave Portsmouth Brewery. It's me and the 2 other girls, and she's about to go in the house. Her client should be arriving. This guy's coming up the walk, and this guy's on his phone. He's all dressed up in like, you know, like a Knicks jacket and all this stuff. And there's a girl hanging on him. She's barely coherent. And he clearly probably has something in his pocket that she needs to get through the next 2 hours. So she's just hanging all over him. And Megan's freaking out. She's just like, oh my God, are they going to be in front of the house when the client shows up?
I am freaking out. This conversation's making me freak out.
Oh no, don't freak out. Stay with me. Deep breath.
I'm
Who
like,
is this? Who just spoke up?
Do I need to be strapped?
No, you need to be thorough. You need to be
Oh,
thorough.
man.
You need to be thorough. So
I'm still stuck on the girl that was found in the
listen, that was years ago, and that happens, you know, not every 20 minutes, but it happens. So my conversation with you today is about being thorough. Okay?
Yep.
Okay, deep breaths. So
very easy steps to make that organic without.
yeah,
Yeah.
super simple.
Yeah.
So she walks up and goes in the house. our friend goes into, and I don't think that they know that I'm there. And again, I'm, I mean, even at my fattest, I'm still 5'9". I'm not a dominating presence, right? But yeah, again, this is back and I'm running. So it's a thinner version of Tim. And they go in and the house was unoccupied. And the guy was spending a lot of time looking at all the cameras and all that kind of stuff. And he, in his conversation with her, said, I'm relocating, my company's relocating, right? So in a conversation, she's thinking, oh, he must got a job with Lonza Biologics over on Pease, like who knows, right? And they start drilling down in that conversation. So at some point I get out of my car and I go up and I sort of stand just inside the breezeway in between the house and the garage. And he's coming back to look at the garage and he sees me. He's like, oh, hi. Like now he realizes there's three of us. Again, and then he probably could have crushed all of us, but there's three of us and two of them. So he realizes she has a team now. And I'm not saying that he was going to be up to no good with her in the moment, but I was like, I wish she'd done a deeper dive. So she finishes the showing. We find, guess who the company is that relocated him? I want you to guess his position and the company that relocated him from Jacksonville, Florida. He was a bar back for Buffalo Wild Wings.
I'm Maron.
He was not being relocated by his company. He was being
Oh.
relocated by somebody else. All that aside, we went back. And if you ever have this tingle when you're talking about somebody, just do a little bit of a deeper dive. We looked him up online. He had over 17 issues down in Florida. Yeah. So
Like criminal issues?
yes.
Oh,
So
man.
there was a thing called Forewarn. Have you guys heard about Forewarn?
Yes,
Forewarn is
but
a
I'd
great
like-
tool. Start,
Okay.
just you look people up. For the most part, when you get through your conversation, are you working with anybody? Hey, as we move forward, and this is how I always ask. So let's go all the way back to just starting to ask the right questions to uncover true motivation and people that actually want to buy. What did I tell you guys the other day? What did I always ask every buyer?
Motivation.
No,
Silent.
what did I ask to make sure that they understood that there was going to be money involved? But I asked one question and got three answers. Mr.
you
Lindsay, is this transaction for you this summer going to be cash?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Super simple. Nobody's ever offended, right? Mr. Lindsay, is this transaction this summer going to be cash for you? Usually a nervous laugh. Oh, no, we have to talk to a lender. Now I know it's not cash. They need to talk to a lender and they haven't yet. Done. Awesome. I'm going to have you talk to Brad, or if you have a local relationship, investigate if they have a local relationship, because we're not steering people. But
I have
find
a
out if they have a
question.
local relationship. And if they do, awesome. Because then you're going to get in touch with them too. Hey, Ted over at ABC Mortgages. This is Tim Lindsay. I'm working with the Joneses. They were going to be connecting today. Or even offer to reach out to them and connect them with their perceived lender. Can you go look at properties while that's happening? Sure. But at that point too, I'm still going to get a license from them. I'm going to start shopping around with them. But then if they're coming in, and we'll talk about this during the process, if they're coming into the office, I'm doing all the paperwork with them there. I've got some stuff on the iPad, which you guys know here in these conference rooms, or whatever you have on your notebook, you can beam up to the TV in the office. And I would set the table. Yeah, I've got some properties based on our conversation. I've got some stuff I think you'd be really excited about. We have to clear this paperwork first. There's a gateway. We're going to do this paperwork so you become my client so I can start to help you. Right? I can answer questions in a sentence or a paragraph. Right? Because we're going to move into a doctor-patient relationship once these papers are filled out. There it is. Let me get that. A lot of sniffling going on. So keys to conversion for A buyers. Respond right away to lead inquiries. This is across the board. Across the board, we should be responding right away to every lead inquiry. There used to be a mindset way back in the day. Well, as long as I don't want to call right away. I'll look desperate. Do you have too much money right now, Barbara? You are desperate, right? I don't know anybody that doesn't want to deal next. Like, oh, I'm going to wait a little while. So let's respond right away to all lead inquiries, certainly A buyers. And an A buyer right now, for the most part, is going to be something coming in on an aggregator like Rise, because we know those people are bottom of the funnel. And then above and beyond that, if you got a referral from a fellow agent, right? Hey, Derek, this is the Joneses. I told them you call them. They're expecting your call. That's not like, maybe I'll call them Saturday. Yeah, you're not trying to look cool in front of a girl, right? Call right away. Yeah. No, I'm going to use the 3-day rule. You're going to be broke, right? Call now. Oh, we're back. Get valid and complete contact information, right? Their name, their phone number, their physical address, and their email address. And when they tell you that they only want to give you their PO box, I appreciate that. Their mailing address is their PO box. Great. Why do we need their physical address? If they're selling their home, that's going to be part of the conversation. And above and beyond that, we also want to be able to give them neighborhood nurtures. We want to be able to talk about where they live, because if they're 2 years out, we do want to keep in touch with them about stuff that's going on where they're living. So I can remind them about what's maybe not going on where they live and what's going on where they want to live, and start to move them mentally away. Determine their motivation to buy so you can speak to it. Again, the blessing of what we're in right now is people that are moving are serious. During COVID, a lot of people were just moving to grab equity. But we've got motivated people that are moving for a reason. Let's find out what the motivation is and keep reminding them of that motivation. Logic makes them think, emotion will make them act. And usually people are moving for something that has to do with their family or a life change. And then set the appointment, time and date for as soon as possible. And if you're on with one of the decision makers and they're like, well, I'm not sure if she's going to be home at that time, I'm still going to pencil it in. Well, let's presume that on a Thursday at 6, she's normally home, Tim? Yeah, awesome. Let's just presume Janine is going to be home. I'm going to put it down for 6 o'clock. And I'll double check with you and you can let me know if we need to make any changes. What's another really cool thing about COVID? My wife can't get out of her office in time to be at home, but can she be on Zoom? Can her husband be on Zoom? And can you be on Zoom? Go through the paperwork through a screen share and have them digitally execute. Yes, this is why I know everybody's zoomed out. Get over it. Half of our class is in class today because of Zoom. It is a massive tool for us right now. Do I want you in person at the kitchen table? Sure. Much more powerful. But if the only way you can get people together, and you'll do a lot of stuff, you're going to have people that sell their house up on the lake and they're never going to be here. It's going to be a mail away closing. Everything's going to get done digitally. They're going to stay in Florida and sell New Hampshire. So we got to have to get good at it anyway. So setting the appointment, absolutely. If there's no question that everybody can be at a kitchen table at a certain time, being in person is awesome. Hyper powerful. But that top line, that goes for all leads. As soon as you get a lead in from any source, aggregator, referral, the Easter Bunny, we call them right away. Because you want to start to let them know. If you work with anybody right now, if you found a buyer right now that wants to go shopping right now, do they really have time to wait? What if something comes on today? How long does it last? If it's priced right, it doesn't. How many things have you seen on Facebook in the last 2 weeks, 2 months, that agents are canceling the open house because it's already under contract? And it was the first open house because they priced it right. So you start to set the pace, you start to set the standard, you start to set expectations when you show up immediately, right? And if they're like, oh, we really want to take our time, and I explain to them that they can't, and they can, it's not going to meet a huge success rate should they choose to move like a turtle. But if they want to move like a turtle, cool. Because hopefully they'll run into enough pain points and miss enough opportunities that they will speed it up. But we do want to mirror and match their speed. But if we show up and like, oh yeah, don't worry about it, we got time. We will, there'll be a buyer's market eventually. There'll be a ton of houses. But there's like 4 right now. Yeah, you know, again, we're not there yet. We haven't eclipsed it yet, but we are still carrying less active listings in the state of New Hampshire than our company typically carries. So we need more active listings. So your buyers need to be aware of that temperature change and they need to behave appropriately.
what's your feedback on the client who wants to see 40 properties with no real gumption, but they've done the pre-approvals, they've gone forward, but I was just talking to my neighbor the other day.
Sure.
For another brokerage, and she said she has one client who she goes all over the sun with him. He's constantly calling, she draws up packets,
Mhm.
spending all this time and energy,
Yep.
and he never pulls the trigger. And she's done one deal with him in the past.
Yep.
But it's been a continuous cycle, so, you know, I obviously wasn't asking for you know, or challenging her on her process. at the
Sure.
time, but just
Yep.
wanted some professional
Well, yeah,
advice.
so she's got a relationship with him, so
Yeah.
she's not gonna screw that up. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
He's pre-approved.
Yep.
So she knows what he's using for a product. And this is happening in America right now?
Yeah,
He's got a list of 40 things he wants to see?
Yeah, she said every week he's firing over one or two more properties. She's drawing up a whole, package of information for him. They're going to see the property and then, crickets until he sends them the next property and so forth. Hasn't been willing to even look at pulling the trigger.
Yeah, and I'm gonna shoot straight off the cuff, like this is what I would say to somebody that, especially where you're telling me she's got a prior relationship.
Yeah.
The next time he calls me, and I'm not making this up, the next time he calls me, I'm gonna be like, hey, Steve, this is awesome. I'm starting to think you're looking for a relationship, not a house.
Yeah.
I've seen you more in the last 2 weeks than I've seen my wife. So again, conversely, Steve, let's go see this house. Let's buy it. Because and you got to go back to what you've seen and run through everything you've seen. We've seen a Gambrel, we've seen a Colonial, we've seen a Cape, we've seen a Salt Box, right? Like, help me, Steve. And if they don't have pre-approval, the defense mechanism would be, you're going to have that couple that comes to you and they got 40 houses they want to see. And absent the approval, and this is where they'll always push back. Well, Tim, I appreciate that you want me to get that, but I feel like you want me to get that because you're trying to find out how much we're worth. I completely understand. And I'm sorry it came across that way. Feel, felt, found, right? I understand how you feel. We've had a lot of clients that have felt the same way. What I found over time is when we know what financial product you're using, we can go back into your list of 40 and probably safely eliminate 20 of them. That's going to save you time. It's going to get you into the house you want and put us in a better position to make the right offer at the right time and save you money. So if saving you time and money is a problem, Mr. Lindsay, please let me know. Of course it isn't, Tim. Awesome. Sign here, stupid. Right? Like, so, but what I would say something like that, like, what are we doing? Or because then if it's like, well, no, we haven't seen a Colonial, a Gambrel, a Salt Box, a Cape, a Ranch. You've looked at how many Colonials. Steve, you know what I realized? First of all, we clearly have a great relationship. I'm looking forward to seeing you today too. My concern is that we haven't really reconnected and talked about exactly what you want. And this is where I have to be the real estate professional and make sure that I'm hyper clear. Are we looking for the perfect Colonial? Because she died in the fire, you know that, right? Like, there's no such thing. So what are the things, what are the non-starters for you, Steve, on the Colonial that we're looking for? Because we've seen 40. And I love working with you. And my fear is, and this is how you preface all of that, Steve, I'm concerned I'm failing you. You take all the fault, right? What do you mean, Tim? Well, we've looked at 40 Colonials. And the only thing that I can determine is that maybe we're looking for the perfect one. But you and I joked about this years ago, Steve. There's no such thing as the perfect house. So what's the non-starter that we seem to keep running into that you haven't shared with me? Yeah. Yep. And if you open up with, I'm concerned I failed you. Oh, of course not. No, it's not you. It's we're looking for the perfect house. Yeah, maybe I'm being too picky. Oh, you're allowed to be selective, but we're not going to ever get out and there's gonna be a rainbow and a unicorn doing cocaine. Like that's not coming to a theater near us. Like there's going to be, we've looked at 40 Colonials, 40, Steve. I love you, buddy. 40. Yep. Yeah. And then you go through it and start to remind them, what was the problem here? 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 Right? What did you like? What are the commonalities, negative or positive, that drew you to these properties? She's got to get better about having that conversation before she gets in the car.
I like the financing conversation seems very easy in this market.
That's going to defend so much of your time.
Ease of movement, you know, when you're ready to strike, knowing that there's multiple offers coming in, just pre-approvals seem like a non-starter.
And that didn't take me long to finally figure that out. It was probably the third time somebody said that, and nobody wants to feel like they're offending somebody. So when somebody says to you like the third time, and it was different people, it was like the third group that had said that to me. You know, why do you need me to do this? You're just trying to find out what we're worth. Well, Steve, you already shared with me what you feel you want to spend. I trust you probably understand what you're going to be pre-approved for, and what you get pre-approved for and what you decide to spend is entirely up to you. My concern is right now, I don't know what financial product you're using. You know, and I would always just gear it, like, especially if they're a veteran. I trust you're going VA. Thank you for your service. And with that comes parameters. This house won't work. There's chipping paint. This house won't work. There's a dead body in the basement. This house won't work. There's no windows. This house won't work. There's no roof. Right? And immediately eliminate all of those to get you into the one that you need. Right? The more you say it, and the more you say it with your twist on it, it can be remarkably candorous and still come across as care-filled. And when you hit that, and then you just have to, there has to be a piece of you that while you're saying these things, in the best interest of your client, it's also in defense of your family. My job as your coach is to get you back in your car and get you home with more money. That's it. Like inside the guardrails of the law, yeah. Right. But I'm honestly not worried about their feelings. If you guys are speaking to them professionally in their best interest, they'll be okay with the language of them at the closing table holding the keys to the house that they wanted. Not like, oh, you have to go look at number 53. Yeah, no, she needs to have an honest conversation with him. And I think she is giving him too much license because it's her second deal with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
In the back of my mind during that conversation, I was like, I don't
Yeah.
see myself in that situation.
Yeah. So 7, close to the appointment tactics, show the benefits. And this is across the board. When you've had a meeting with them and they've told you what they're looking for in a house, when you take them shopping, don't walk into the kitchen. This is the example I always use. Don't walk into the kitchen and be like, Mr. and Mrs. Lindsay, here's the fridge, there's the sink, there's the stove. This is the kitchen. You just pointed out the features. Point out the benefits. The benefits are, Mr. and Mrs. Lindsay, when we were talking a few weeks ago at the conference table, you talked about when your mother-in-law comes up, she loves to cook with the boys and she wants a cook's kitchen. And you want that space for her to have that time with your boys. This one, Mr. Lindsay even has the pasta spout over the stove. So you don't have to lug 80 gallons of water, right? In that moment, they're realizing, wow, when I thought they were just trying to get me to sign the paperwork, they were actually listening. What do I always say to you guys? The number one thing that scripts offer you are the benefit to answer questions, ask questions, and listen at a higher level. I'm not worried about what you're going to say next. But I remembered to you what was most important about the kitchen. Because every kitchen has all those features. Don't walk me into the backyard and be like, here's the big backyard you were talking about. I wouldn't even mention that. Like, here's that space for your daughter's wedding in a few years because you wanted to have it at the homestead. Did you remember that? Or did you just sort of remember they said at one point, big backyard? Stop talking about the features, talk about the benefits. So what are the benefits of working with you? Because you're going to get this a lot, especially in an age where people get a hold of you to go look at one house. And they're like, well, I just wanted to get a hold of you. I just wanted to see this one house. And I actually was looking for the listing agent. Well, I completely appreciate that, Mr. Lindsay. But you are on a journey as a buyer, correct? Yeah. And you also have something to sell? No, this will be our first purchase. We're leaving a lease. Awesome. So when you are buying a house, you do want representation, correct? Yeah, but I know I'll save money if I work with the agent that has the listing. That could be true. But and I'm just sharing my personal experience, and this is the way I feel. You're never going to have a chance to really have all of that person working on your behalf, even mathematically, if it's perfect. And I don't believe that to be true. I'll be quite honest with you, Mr. Lindsay. If I already have a relationship with the seller of the house that you want to buy, I can do dual agency. I said this once. I thought JV was going to kick me in the face. We can do dual agency, but I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that you're going to get 50% of my heart and they're going to get 50% of my heart. I've been in a relationship with somebody longer. It can expedite the process, right? But above and beyond that, you do want representation. So if we're on a buyer's journey and we know we're probably going to look at more than 1 or 2 houses, I work with a company that has 660 teammates who have listings coming on that nobody else knows about, but I can find out about before the general public does. So if I found out about a house that we describe to each other today, before it comes on the market, and you get to the front of the line and get to negotiate against less people, so you get it faster for less money, would that be a problem? I always asked it that way. I never said, always use the positive, negative. No, that sounds great. Awesome, sign here. That's why we're working together. Don't need to go through the other 6 things. The take back close. And this is, we're talking about the paperwork. And you're going to say to them like, yeah, we're going to, let's look at the house, but then we have to clear some paperwork before we go on to other showings. Oh, no, I just wanted to see this one house. Okay, but what about seeing other houses in the future? Well, yeah, I'll give you a call. Yeah, you're making my point. We're going to go through the paperwork so we can sit down and decide if we want to work together. Right? The take back close. Maybe we don't want to work together, right? What do I say to you guys all the time? The elevator pitch. Why should I work with you, Tim? Miles, I'm not sure we should work together. But if you have a few minutes, I'd love to ask you some questions to make sure that we're a fit, right? That's the take back close. Because they assume that we are dying to work for them. We're excited for the opportunity, not if they're a jackalope, not if they're an idiot, not if they're not listening, not if they won't speak to another human that can get them a piece of paper that says, I'm tall enough for the ride, you can buy a house. I'm not going browsing with you. We're going shopping. Bring your checkbook, right? The negative positive close, I talk about that all the time, right, guys? Like, if we delivered X, Y, and Z, would that be a problem for you? No, of course. Awesome. Give them what they're looking for. This is asking, and do this with your buyers and your sellers. Mr. and Mrs. Lindsay, with your next realtor, what are qualities that you're looking for? And we've talked about this. Well, you know what? The old adage that realtors are always late seems to be true. We'd love somebody who's punctual. Awesome. Negotiating skills are important, obviously. Great. And we just want you to be honest with us. And like, by the time I'm asking that question, I've probably already shot my mouth off enough that they know that I'm going to be pretty freaking candorous. I was definitely on time. I grew up in a military household. If you're on time, you're late, right? I was always on time. I was always, maybe not delivering it the way people wanted to hear it, but I was always super candorous. And the greatest? No. But was I pretty proud of the way I negotiated for my clients? Yes. And you are giving them a deep dive into how you're going to behave for them on the streets by negotiating for yourself in the moment. Right? So when I'm negotiating with them and handling their objections and telling them why they want to work with me, I'm just going to take that same energy to the conversation with the other broker, negotiating to buy or sell their house. The trial close, just keep asking for like, hey, we're ready to get started. 2 more questions. Awesome. Fire away. The assumptive close. We're going to look at the house and we're going to sit down and do the paperwork so we can get started. Right. Diana Kokoska, great maps coach who actually built the Bold class. She would knock on the door. Pete Metch still does this when he comes to my office, even when he doesn't have an appointment. It's the, and and I'll yell, come in. And the joke was, Diana Kokoska always says, we had an appointment at 4 o'clock and it's 4 o'clock. May I come in? Pete will knock on my door at 1:32 and say, we had an appointment at 1:33. Yeah. Anyway, there's that. And then when she got in the house, they let her in. She's like, awesome. I'm so excited to be here today to list your home. I'm listing your home. She already said it. Because what are they gonna do at that point? Oh, no, we're not, no, you're not, no, they're gonna do that. They're like, okay. Oh, and she was this big. She's still alive. I made it sound like she died. This big, 78 pounds soaking wet. Alpha male, right? Sit down, stupid. Somebody get me a scotch. Don't drink during closings. Yeah, alpha male. Awesome. I'm so excited to be here to list your house today. Done. And then tie downs are just asking for the close. So in a few minutes after we finish the paperwork and I put a sign in your yard, we're gonna go over what the next steps are. Oh, are we moving forward? Oh, you have more questions? Well, no, we just wanted to think about it. Completely appreciate that. What do we need to think about? Well, we just want to sleep on it, a little more time. What do I always say to you guys about that? We don't need time, we need info, right? When you get that pushback that they want to sleep on it, we want to think about it. Yeah, I trust you do. What have you not asked? When they say they need more time, they don't need more time, they need more information. Because absent the correct information for them to use to make the decision, doesn't matter how much more time we give them. And the response that I get from people is, well, I feel like when you say that, you're being pushy. You're being salesy. I'm doing my job, and the job as a salesperson is to help your consumer make a decision. And I would rather come across to my peers as pushy than come across to my family as poor, right? And if you're insulted by that, doors over there, the bus for Kohl's gets here at 10. Because we have to behave differently in this marketplace. We have to do things differently. Because there's not one more client waiting for you. You're not going from your 2:30 to your 3 o'clock. This is not Baskin Robbins. There's one flavor today, and you better friggin' sign them. Buyer objections to the appointment. Let them ask questions, right? If they're pushing back on the appointment, let them ask questions. And you ask questions. Because they want to get started, but they don't want to meet tomorrow at 3 or Thursday at 4. Well, I understand that, Mr. Lindsay. When did you want to get started? Oh, we want to get started, but we just, I don't, well, so it sounds like you have a question. Fire away. Yeah, I'm not really sure. Now, most of this bullet point number 1 is going to get eliminated. And we're going to show you the slides, and they're in command, is the buyer packet with all your information. Everything about you and your process they've already seen because you sent that over before the meeting. And don't forget, we have empathy, authenticity, and logic, right? Feel, felt, found. That felt portion is the empathy. I'm sorry, feel is the empathy. You know, we just want some more time to think about X, Y, or Z or whatever. They don't need time, they need information. And empathize with them. Yeah, I understand how you feel. And I certainly don't want you to feel rushed. And this is taking great notes while you're on the phone with them. But based on our conversation yesterday, Mr. Lindsay, we wanted to be looking at houses this weekend. Brad has all your math. We'll have a decision from him probably in the next couple of hours. And again, I'm excited to show you some properties. But we can't really go out into the wild and have me representing you until we've finished this conversation and signed this paperwork. You're signing me into employment so I can negotiate on your behalf. And don't forget, Mr. Lindsay, my company serves 4 states. All of the paperwork in all 4 of those states are designed to protect the consumer. We are given the ability by the governors of those states to serve the civilians of those states, and the paperwork protects the clients and guides our conversations. If at any moment you feel like this is going sideways, I'd love to have a conversation with you. And the reason I'm being so thorough right now is so you don't feel like we're going sideways. Because if we got to a point where we're standing in a house and you want to go back out to the trunk of my car and start to cobble together a deal, and we're not working with each other yet, And I would even, and you could, nobody's any the wiser. When you're sitting with somebody. Mr. Lindsay, right now, based on my team and the tools that we have, we can serve about 12 families at a time. I'd love for you to be one of those families. Create exclusivity. Again, I'm not dying to work with you. And I think we just have to be better at having that conversation. If there is pushback, identify the real issue. You know, and a lot of people, oh, the buyer side's fine because I work for free. If I hear you say that in public, I will kick you in the face. We got to stop using that language. That's why people got in trouble. And it's not going to be here tomorrow, but very soon, they are going to separate the commissions and you are going to get your commission from your buyer. It's not going to be baked into the conversation with the listing. That is coming to a theater near us eventually. So we have to get real good at having the conversation. Yes, Mr. Lindsay, 3% is on this paperwork. More often than not, we're going to run into agents that are offering close to that, maybe a little bit less. If there's a
Tim.
delta, hello,
Do you think buyers are gonna be hesitant to pay that commission?
when the time comes, it's just going to be the way of the world.
So they're really not gonna have a choice then, unless they want to go unrepresented.
Yeah, well, but don't forget, and here's where we have to be really clear. And I'm not inviting you guys to get lost in the weeds unless you need to go here and clear this up. But we had to do it several times. When I'm explaining their contract and we get to the 3%, Mr. Shriver, please understand, signing here empowers me to go ask to have this supported. If the seller, it's not the listing agent, if the seller has chosen to offer, historically in our area right now, most people are taking marketing fees of 6 apples and they are sharing a portion that might be close to this 3. It's my team's standard to request 3. This is not coming directly out of your pocket. It is a portion of the funds that you will slide across the table at the closing. I would say it just like that. This is not above and beyond the price of the home, but your commission being supported by the seller is already baked into the conversation. If we're absent any part of the 3%, there are ways we can make it up. In this market, in order to get you into the home that you want to be in, I'm not going to muddy the waters. If there's a missing 0.5%, 1/4%, 3/4%, I would never say full percent because that would suck and I'd probably just go to Kohl's. The bus gets here soon. If there are missing percentages, there are ways to make that up, but I'm also not going to step over dollars to pick up dimes. I'm just going to ask you to send me every human you know for the rest of your life so I can do this for them. Is that okay? And they would say yes. And I swear, hand to God, I never, ever went back to one of my buyers for missing percentages. I asked for the referrals. Because and I know people are just like, and Nate's like, well, you should. Like, Nate and I fight every 7 minutes. If he was here, we'd be fighting now, right? So I just didn't. I don't know if that was a lack of confidence or what. I don't think I exude a lack of confidence. I just never chose to go in that direction, and I chose to just ask for the referrals. But I never had somebody sign paperwork. And don't forget, I stopped selling at 14. So this has been the standard play for a while. Every one of my people signed for 3. Because you don't go, oh, we're going to sign the buyer's agent agreement per 123 Main Street, and they're offering 2.5. And just reminding your buyer, this allows me to ask for the 3. Whatever they're going to support, I'm all about it. The win for me is getting you into the house, right? And honestly, after that, if I served you well, Mr. Lindsay, I just want you to tell everybody you know that I'll do it for them. Because I'd rather get another 2.5% than die on the hill fighting for my 0.5%. Right? Go ahead, Declan.
Are listing agents gonna be lowering their commissions then down to like 2 or 3 or something like that?
I don't know what it's going to look like. This is a conversation that JV and Westcott will bring to us when the time comes.
Yeah.
Yes. In that brave new world, when we get there, and it will be sooner than later, it's not tomorrow, you will have your individual conversation with your buyer. for your commission, and they will have an individual conversation with their seller for their commission.
But it all
It
still
won't
comes
be-
out of the
Won't be a
sale,
number
right?
that supports both, and that will eventually happen for us in New England eventually. I'm gonna say eventually 2 more times, so Nate doesn't
But
fight.
it all
'Cause I
still
don't want
comes
him
out
to
of the
come up here
sale.
lighting fires. Go ahead.
It all still comes out of the sale though, right?
Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah. So it's almost the same thing. They're just rearranging how it's worded almost, or like how
Well,
it looks on paper.
Well, so look at it. It's gonna be, it would be on their Alta statement as a debit to the buyer. Because right now, it's coming through as a credit to the buyer based on the funds that they're putting through, or it's a debit to the buyer, I apologize. Yeah, so it's not gonna be a check they're handing you. It's gonna be on the Alta statement,
Yeah.
so they would roll it into their financing the way they've done everything else.
Okay.
But that, it's just the math is split now. They're only responsible for half of it, honestly, right?
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of things, the seller is responsible still for the listing side. And they are still responsible for all of it. It's just gonna be dealt out differently on the Alta statement. I trust how it's gonna go. But again, it's coming soon, and I say that because time is flying. It's May 3rd right now. Wasn't it just January? Yeah, it was. So it's gonna be here before we know it, and I just want you guys to be ready for it. Right now, what we need to be doing is having honest conversations with our buyers about what our percentage is and explain to them that we're not free. Stop using the word free. My services, your services are not free. Your services don't go above and beyond the price of the home. But we are not free. There's no reason in this industry that we should be using that 4-letter F word with our consumers. That is 2 buckets of stupid with a side of fries. The only thing free in your office should be a cup of coffee if they want it. Everybody understand? I just want to be really clear about that. Stop using the word free. That's why we're going into what we're probably going to be going into, because people have been historically saying we're free. Because they are grabbing their compensation from the seller, but it's from the check that got slid across the table by your buyer. And I've only had to go into the weeds with that a few times and actually said that. This is not above and beyond the cost of the house, Mr. Lindsay, but it is coming from the check that you're bringing to closing. And I'm like, oh, yeah, like sign here. Let's go. Let's go. We just lost 20 minutes. 3 houses that you wanted to see are gone now, right?
Seems silly even having to justify that conversation ultimately, but then realizing, ultimately that money's coming out of somewhere,
Yep.
no matter what.
Yeah, it's not
And
magic.
Anybody, I've never, even done it, I've done independent transactions, but I'm just starting out here in this, I would never even think that would be nothing but an understood conversation in the process.
Yep.
But ultimately,
Well, and this goes right back to, and we'll talk more about this on Friday with the sellers too. This is gonna go right back to when they're just like, oh, my friend told me she worked with the buyer's agent, but it was free. Yeah, she was misinformed. I apologize for the entire industry, Mrs. Lindsay. Nobody should ever say that. It's not true. The math, the law, 4th grade, show your work. If we show our work, it's not true. It's never true. I showered today. I have electricity at my house. I assure you, I don't work for free. My boys are very expensive, right? So when there's pushback about that, and they're just like, well, and especially, and we'll talk more on Friday on the listing side, when people say, well, yeah, but I talked to somebody and they're willing to list my house for 4, 4.5, whatever. And I know we'd all love to get 6s, and sometimes we move to 5.5 or 5s or whatever. No judgment. But when somebody says to you, yeah, 5, somebody told me they do it for 4. Interesting. If you don't mind me asking, Mr. Lindsay, did they offer 4 or did you ask for it? No, they just offered it up. That's cool. I mean, I appreciate they just offered it up. My question for you, Mr. Lindsay, is if they were just willingly offering up their own opportunity to bring home to their family, and they weren't fighting for their greatness in the moment, how do you think they'll behave on your family's behalf when they earn the right to represent you? Because if I'm not fighting for Janina and my boys, I'm not really gonna go to the mat for the Joneses. Because if I had that skill set, if I had that tenacity, if I had that know-how in that language, why wouldn't I utilize it for my family? So. And you'll run into that a bunch. But the other agent said they do it for X. Cool. Good for them. That's great. Preparation call. We want to confirm the appointment date and the time where we're meeting. Listen, we always hear me say conference tables and kitchen tables. You can meet with your buyers at their kitchen table because you're probably getting the listing as well. But if this is their first time buying or they're transitional or whatever, bring them into this office, bring them into one of our business centers. Leverage all of that because you immediately start to make them feel like we're working with a professional. I would have them, I'd let them know too, hey, we're going to get together at 9 o'clock. If you guys can be here at 8:45, I've got some stuff for you to fill out. And this is when we were still doing it that way. And I'd have them fill out certain stuff. And then I had a buyer's guide with them answering questions and stuff like that. But they would come in, get that clipboard, fill out that information. And then I'd get a phone call that they were done with it. And I'd walk in when they were done. Just like you do in an office. You're not laying in somebody's chair to get your face drilled until you filled out all your paperwork and prove that you can pay for it, right? It starts to set a standard, right? We can't manage expectations that we never set. I'm going to make sure everybody's going to be there because otherwise we can't actually have an executed contract. Complete your buyer guide. Make sure they get a copy of that. We're going to show slides of it. It's in command. It's plug and play. Prepare your meeting space. If you're going to be in a conference room, and we should be pretty good about it, and our entire staff, when we walk by, if we see that somebody was in there and they threw everything around, we go in and clean it up. And remember that when you're leaving, you're closing. I know you're excited, push the chairs in, put the pens back in the thing in the middle of the table. So the next person coming in has the same professional environment that you had. Please, please, please. And then review that sheet. What did they tell you when you first spoke to them? What were they looking for? Because we want to be able to draw on all of that. Their original motivation, why they're getting started. Because you might have already sent them to a lender. Maybe it's going to happen, especially if you're here. If you can do it here and you can confirm with Brad that he's going to be here and he pops by real quick. Oh, guys, hey, I told you Brad right in our office, this is him now. Wave him in. It was all set up. You wave him in. You excuse yourself so they can have a private conversation with Brad. Because when it gets to that point, and I would prefer that you're having them converse with Brad before you even take some of your time to give to them. So they're showing up as people that are real. And at that point, Brad's going to come back and be like, yep, they're good. This is what they're pre-approved for. And it might be, and again, it might be more than they expected. It might be more than they want to spend, and remind them of that. Because, you know, and it's all going to be factored in, but their debt to income ratio, do they want to get home from work and eat ramen in a big house? Or do they want to get home in the Cape that they needed, you know, and they each get their own chicken breast? You know, that being house poor is like, oh, it's awesome. We'd love to have people over, but we can't afford 4 cups, you know? Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful house. I mean, we got the heat shut off in most of it because, yeah, we went in way over our head, but people do that. And I get that, but remind them of what they're looking for. Remind them that this is a starter drug. Like, this is your first house. Maybe you guys keep this after a little while. They're a young couple. They're just getting started. It's a little Cape with no garage. They're going to be parking outside, but they're not parking in the street anymore. And then in a couple of years, they roll, get their next house, and they start cash flow on the first one. We're dealing with a lot of immediate, what's the word I'm looking for? Immediate gratification. Thank you. It's been a long week today. Yeah, we're dealing with so much of that now. We have to sort of take people back and be just like, the original conversation was the Cape in this town to be close to that school. And now because the number is different or whatever, and that's not the case for a lot of people, but you'll have that pop up every once in a while. Like, oh my God, we are so excited. We got 4. We ended up getting 675. You know, for whatever reason. And this doesn't happen much anymore. Couples back in the day would normally run the mortgage off just one salary. God forbid something happened, you know, and I mean job loss. I don't mean death, but like, you know, but most couples now, just because the grind that we're in, are running both salaries. They're running both employments to get the number they're looking for. Questions about any of this stuff? I have that same shirt. I think I might do that with my hair. Yep. I'll move this out of the way for you guys. I'm losing our mind. Top 10 service areas, the buyer value proposition. The needs analysis, asking them all about them, about their search, why this move is important, why this house is important. This is what we're doing when we're taking the buyer intake sheet, when we're on the phone with them. And we might continue it in another conversation, but we want to make sure that we're asking all the right questions, right? The connection questions. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. Getting them pre-qualified or pre-approved. And I said earlier to the class, the 4 things you should have in a file before you start shopping with anybody. Pre-approval or proof of funds. Their buyer's agency agreement. Their New Hampshire brokerage disclosure, which you sign first. It says at the top, it's not a contract. I would bring a highlighter with me and highlight that in front of them. They signed that first. They can refuse to sign that, but normally when they're moving forward, they won't. Buyer's agency agreement. And then, of course, the KW general disclosure, which is Megan's Law, hazmat, wire fraud, all that kind of stuff. Those 4 things should be in your file. And if you want to trump it with a couple more things, then you get their license, a copy of their license as well. But if they've got pre-approval or proof of funds, and they're filling out all the other stuff, you probably don't need their licenses. If you're going to meet them before you get pre-approval or proof of funds at a property, have them scan through their licenses. If they're pushing back on that, there's probably a reason they're pushing back on that. Neighborhood information. Where do they want to be? What are they looking for? We live in Stratford. We just got electricity. It's very exciting. And I got home about a year ago, and apparently the town decided in the capital budget that they had some money they needed to spend. I pulled onto our road. We're on Second Crown Point. And I turned on the road and I'm like, what in the hell is this? They threw a double yellow line down our street. And obviously the industry we work in, I immediately thought, that's going to drive people away. People are going to see that and feel like we're a busy road. If you're counting turtles and like horseback, yeah, we've got a whole bunch of people on the road. There's nothing going on my street. For them to throw a double yellow line was so ridiculous. They did. But finding out about that stuff, do you want to be on a main road? What do you want it to look like? Do you want, private mature growth around each lot? Do you want private lots? Do you want it to be off the street? Certain portions of Portsmouth, people want walkability scores. How close is it to everything? We're gonna need a car to go live our life, but if we want to leave house and walk down to Jumpin' Jay's, can we do that? Is it 4 miles or is it down the street? I think there should be a candy index. We have so much data. There's a neighborhood in Stratford called Wig Hill. It's where everyone goes for Halloween because the candy index is off the charts. And I think that could be something that you could add. Yeah, and you could just invent that number as a joke, especially for a family that has short people. Just a joke with the kids. Hey, you guys should know the candy index in this neighborhood is 8.7. Off the charts. Yep. Everybody on the street gives away full-size bars. No apples. No apples. Yeah, exactly. Build their home search. We talked about this earlier, making sure less is more. I know what they're looking for. I know they want a garage, but this is a couple who just got out of an apartment with street parking. And suddenly Ted and Stacy want a 3-car garage. Like, we got less is more. They want we joked earlier about the wood burning stone hearth fireplace. I wouldn't put that in the search. I'm looking for a house that has a wall big enough in the living room that we could do a gas insert that looks like a wood burning stone. Less is more in the home search, but making sure that you do have key information of what they're looking for: beds, bathrooms, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, making the offer, getting to the point where they make the offer. We just talked about your friend that has the friend that's looking at all the houses. We would do a rating system as we would go through properties, and I always liken this to, if you guys remember what it was like to be at a mall, because they're all closed now, and you're coming down the escalator and you're going into Nordstrom's, and there's 2 people at the bottom of the escalator and they're crushing you with cologne. And like, yeah, like you go nose blind because you smelled so many colognes and perfumes, you don't even know you can't even feel your eyes anymore, right? I think once a client has seen 5 to 6 houses, they're going to start to go stir crazy. That's a pretty busy afternoon. The only reason I would augment that is if I had a family coming in from Ohio and they're here for 2 days and we have to see a bunch of stuff and they don't really know the area. We would do that, and like we'd invariably end up in maybe a few different towns too, because they were trying to feel out, do they want to be in Kittery? Do they want to be in Portsmouth? Do they want to be in Newburyport? Because that would happen to me. I got referrals for people that were shopping just like sort of the East Coast because I was licensed in all 3 states. That'd be a long weekend. I'd be willing to do that for them. But if I had somebody who was local, we're looking at 5 or 6. And conversely, and Nate says this all the time, and it's so friggin' true, never show somebody one. If they surface a little bit and they're like, hey, I want to go look at this one, they're sort of active, you get a call every other week, find 2 or 3 more. Make you leaving your family worth your time. And I bet one of the houses you pick out, they'll buy. I had one of my last clients, it was the last winter I was selling, and they wanted to go out and look at stuff on Super Bowl Sunday. And it was a Patriots Super Bowl Sunday. I'm just like, dear God. And I love them to death, but I was just like, what are we doing? They wanted to look at this one thing, and it was important for a myriad of reasons. What they wanted to look at based on what they had for money and the product they were using, because he was military, it was a no-go. But I wasn't going to tell them that. I brought them to the property to make sure they understood why it was a no-go. And then I took them to 3 more properties. They bought property number 3 that night. We made an offer that night. I got it in right before kickoff. It was excellent. So never just show one house. You know what they're looking for. They know what they're looking for. They found this one. Make sure you take them on a tour. Make it worth your while. I think you get to a tipping point when you get to that 5, 6, 7 number, they're going to start to go nose blind. As I took them through properties and we're leaving properties on a scale from 1 to 7, and there is no 5. Where are we? So every time we left the house, there was a leader in the clubhouse, right? And a couple of times they're like, oh, this is the one. Cool. And I would call you and Derek and be like, I apologize, dude. We're not swinging over. We just found the one. And I would call the other agents and let them know that we weren't coming. And then there's people that get in their heads about, well, if you know there's the pony, the golden pony, do you go there first or last? And people are all over the place with that. I think if you're on a big long tour and you think the pony might disappear in the few hours that you're on the road, maybe you go there first. But you'd still be able to get an offer in, you know. But in the grand scheme of things, I would not show them too many houses, and then just keep reminding them the one that they love. We're on house number 4. The first 3 don't matter. This is the new winner. Awesome. Do you want to go look at the next 2? Right. And I sort of would strategically put them in proximity order, square footage order. So it was always a tease for them to go see the other ones, because they're not like looking at this colonial they want to buy and they're like, oh yeah, that's a Cape and it's got no roof. We don't need to bother. I would scale them in a certain way. But a couple of times people are like, no, this is it. Because you guys all know, you walk into a house and you immediately know if it's going to be your home, right? You just get the feels for it, you know. So negotiating to buy. More of the negotiations are going to happen between you and your buyers than with you and the listing agent. Because, and I'll do this for all of you, when you come into my office and you're like, get my first buyer under, I'll be like, Zoe and I'll give you a little golf clap, because what do we know has to happen now? Inspections. And you invariably have to help your buyers fall back in love with the house. Sometimes, not all times, but sometimes. So there's the negotiating to buy, vendor coordination. Who do we have to line up immediately as soon as the offer goes in and it gets accepted? We got to get the home inspector out as soon as possible. Time kills deals, and we only have a certain window of time to make sure that we're getting those inspections done. Pre-close preparation, making sure that they know what they need to bring to the table. They need to have their licenses. They need to have that check. It can't be a personal check. It needs to be a bank check. Getting them to the closing, making sure you have all of your paperwork executed. How many times do you get to the closing and the purchase and sales executed, and you still don't have an executed buyer's agency agreement? Guess who doesn't get paid? Yeah. Yep. No, that can't be true. Of course they'll pay me. Will they? Have you met Tristan and Kaylee? They will not pay you. And then post-closing, what's your post-close process? How are you wrapping up with everybody? How do you stay in touch with the client? Was the listing agent somebody that you think would benefit from moving their business here? Maybe. Did I just go 15 forward? Hang on, there we go. So this is in the slide deck. The list looks like it's going off the screen. I don't know why, but it is. A welcome letter. I love this for both sellers and buyers. You will have a lot of listing agents that will do this. The welcome letter is going to welcome everybody to the deal. And number two, the timeline of the buying process. It's all the dates, all the pertinent dates that are in the contract, pulled out of the contract, put in a list. This is when inspections are due. This is when second escrow is due, because sometimes people do a second escrow after a home inspection. The home search process. How to access the KW app. Get that to them as soon as you can. The value proposition, we talked about that. Reasons to buy a home. And when you guys get into the slide deck, and we'll show you what it looks like in a second, it's in command. You can pull stuff out if you want to. You want this to be a little bit cleaner than this. The financial worksheet, the credit check, interest rate chart. There's stuff in there that you want to talk to Brad and make sure you're getting information from him on that. It's in command, in templates. And that's in templates in command. It's also where your listing presentation is as well. And you can pick any style you want when you get in there. So you see listings, you see buyers. There's neighborhood snapshots, but you can go in and pick any buyer presentation that you want. Some of them are super clean and they look newer. Some of them are very wordy. What you'll notice they did originally, and I think it still is true, depending on which one you pick, based on the color scheme, and most of them are black and white or black and white and red, whatever. You'll go through and you'll realize as you're going page to page, every black page is logical, every white page is emotional. So you realize this is a page where we're going through logical things. This is a page where we're going through emotional things. And you'll also notice too, that house on the second slide with the tire swing, that could be in New England. You're going to see a lot of photo ops baked into Keller stuff that are other parts of the country. Like I wouldn't want my buyer presentation to have 2 palm trees in the front yard. That's confusing. You look disconnected. And here's how deep it goes. I know it's a little bit whited out, certainly on this screen. The screen in the middle is terrible. Partnering with an agent. The first thing you talk about is getting pre-approved. Finding the house, making the offer, negotiating, going under contract. Before close, closing day, and what to bring. And then actual closing day. Everything there. In 2 sheets. To make sure they understand what the process looks like. What does this also do? It's a lot of stuff there, right? That, to me, that justifies your 3 apples. It's a lot of work. Because most of the humans are like, oh, no, I watch it on HGTV. They've all got really nice clothes. They drive really nice cars. I don't really think they do much, though. Okay. Okay. We do. Start to bake in your numbers. If I looked like her, I'd leave that picture up because she's beautiful, but I don't. So we'll pull her out. I'll put my face there, unfortunately. My information. Whatever credentials you want. She's got Y4C2Ts there. Years in the business. How many clients you've helped. How many repeat clients, right? That's a huge number. That's great. Clients served last year. And the proof is in the numbers. So it's what she's done and then how she stacks up. It's not much, but it's convincing them that they should work with her, right? And I mean, it's not much saying like it's only a couple of pages. It's just enough for them to understand she's got the numbers.
In place of the numbers of the.
Yeah.
One person that doesn't.
Great question. Go ahead. Yep.
Leverage market center.
Amen, sister.
Yeah.
Yep. So every all partners meeting, we update the broker metrics numbers. If you ever need those, I believe Jeff and JLAP have access. It's really weird. Like the broker metrics numbers have to be tied to a computer that's wired to an office. Like I can't just be at home and be like, I'm gonna go with the broker metrics. I don't even have license on my desk. I don't think they want me in there screwing the numbers up. But anyway, so I think you got to get those numbers either from JLAP or Jeffrey, Kaylee's desk too, I think, and probably downstairs in Nathan's office. Susanna could bring them up. But when he shares those, he'll share pretty quickly skate through like regional numbers and county numbers, but he can get us numbers for our market center and you can share those. And yeah, and that just speaks to me and my team. The royal we. Use the royal we until you make your own story. I hate the term fake until you make it, but if that's how you want to look at it, but like I think just this is the team I joined. This is what my office has done, and I'm just happy to be part of this office. You know, you look at some of what our individual agents do in a month, and they're outselling some offices in Portsmouth, right? So you put all of our numbers together, it's just mind-boggling, right? I'm knowledgeable and caring and the best agent for these clients. They will appreciate my expertise and preparation and choose me to represent them as they buy a home. Again, 2 sheets ago, the list of all the things that we do, that's your roadmap. And again, there might be some stuff that you don't do. Here's more of the buyer needs analysis with all of the questions. You can go into your template and pull out questions you don't like. If you use this, here's the problem, here's the challenge. If you use this, you'll be wildly prepared. If you don't use this, and there's questions on this sheet that you didn't ask, and that jams you up eventually, said with love as your coach, that's all your fault. Because the whole entire menu has been handed to us by Gary. So why would you not use these templates? And if you're on a team and there you have their own package, obviously it's working well. I would use that. Questions about bathrooms, the kitchen. No stone goes unturned. And then we're going to get started. You just showed up with all your numbers, how you measure against the market, against the marketplace. You asked a ton of questions. Now you're sharing with them how you're going to communicate because you're going to give them your KW Consumer app. You can show them your Command mobile app. As you guys communicate back and forth between those 2 apps, where does it go? It goes in their contact page under notes. That whole entire conversation. So you don't have to take notes, which is super cool. Just texting back and forth. Some people have chosen to actually make their calls through the Command mobile app Because that also documents it as a touch and leaves notes. What does it say under offer your KW app? Set expectations. We cannot manage what we do not set. Explain to them what happens. Set up the searches. I would, if I was meeting somebody here, and I would set the table and say, hey, we're gonna meet, we've gotta complete some paperwork, and then I have some stuff I want to look at with you this afternoon. And if they were open to that, especially if they cleared their afternoon for it, there's no way they're not signing the paperwork. So that next step, be here at 9 o'clock. We're gonna finish some paperwork, then we're gonna go look at some properties. Now they're definitely signing the paperwork because they want to look at the properties. And I know this goes back to sending lender recommendations. They have a local lender, awesome. Make sure it's local. Bank of America is not local. If they don't have a local lender, make sure you have multiple relationships. First person I would always send them to when I was selling was Brad. Ten conversations. Who's having 10 conversations? I know you guys know this whole drill. Let's talk about the conversations for a second. Who had 10 conversations yesterday? Declan's on mute. He's having a conversation right now. Anybody have any conversations yesterday? Hands up. Yes. Okay. People talk to people. Paul, talk to people. Good. Halfway there.
Yeah.
So you 5 yesterday. Oh, I love that. Better than 0, dude. Better than 0. I'm not going to waste your time with this. We've talked about this so much. Just be aware of the do not call list. If you have questions about this, please reach out to us. It doesn't happen every 5 minutes. It happens. It's expensive. The best way to stay out of this is stay in your phone, stay in contact with people that you know and love and trust. Because some of those people are on the do not call list, but they're never going to pull that card on you because you have a relationship. I engage in every conversation in the spirit of contribution, and people are happy to be in relationship with me. Has anybody built an affirmation? Does anybody use an affirmation ever? 3 no's in house. Paul, any affirmations?
I don't actually understand what you're asking, Tim.
So what's on the screen right now, I would consider an affirmation, right? So
Okay.
do you have an affirmation that you use in your daily life or since you started real estate? I'd offer one up. I think the one that I like the most, that sort of just tells us what we do every day. I know I talk about this quite a bit. Has anybody read The 7 Levels of Communication from Michael Maher? M-A-H-E-R. He's a Keller agent. It's a phenomenal book. He was actually here a couple of years ago and taught to it. There's a mantra in that book. Today, somewhere in my city, someone is looking for help, and it's my job to find them. That's what it boils down to. I'm not calling any of you to find out if you're selling. I'm calling any of you to find out who you know that I should know. I'm calling my best people to find out who their best people are. That's the video game of what we do. So phenomenal book if you haven't read it. I know we talk about a lot of books, but I personally, I'd say this in front of Gary, I consider that, for me, that's the 4th gospel of Keller Williams. Because Michael Maher is a Keller agent. Obviously the Red Book, Shift, The One Thing, and that. Really good book. Questions before we break out of here about anything? Everybody knows where to find the buyer's guide, right? It is in templates and command. If your team already has one, awesome. If you have a friend in the industry that you know and love and trust, ask them to see what they have. You might have some veteran agents that roll their eyes and they're like, oh, I'm not worried about that. I have a listing presentation now. What if you had both? What if you showed up at the buyer's consultation most prepared? What if that thing that you work on now that you get better at and maybe you curate it over time? What if that makes 3% a no frickin' brainer? Because I guarantee if you just show up with a pen and some paperwork and a crooked necktie, you'll be like, I don't know if he's actually, what is this 3%? Yep. Can you yell into the microphone just for the folks the beautiful folks at home? God.
So let's pretend you're talking to either a client or a potential client
Mhm.
who's looking to buy. And you ask them like, what are you looking for? If they don't specifically know, like, oh yes, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, this many square feet. How do you kind of get that answer without leading them in a direction that might truly like not be what they desire? So you say big backyard, everyone's gonna say yes, but that might not be their priority.
Well, no, yeah, you make a great point, right? I think, great question, by the way. I think a lot of people get jammed up because when we think American dream, we think about think about the house you want to live in. Is anybody in their dream house right now? Does anybody currently own their dream house? I know Paul has an island, so he can recuse himself from answering. Yeah. Paul, you in your dream house?
Absolutely.
Oh, I love that for you. Also makes me want to punch you in the face, but I love you, buddy. Good for you.
Punch away. Go take your best.
Punch away. He's like, it's fine. I'll bleed all over my beautiful house. It's fine. God bless you, Paul. Yeah, and I say to you guys all the time on social media, why not pose that question online? You just simply go on your business Instagram today and ask, are you currently living in your dream home? And see how people answer. So to Derek's question, when you say, what are you looking for? And if they don't really have an idea, that's when we start to drill down. So you know that you're sitting with the decision makers, you're with Tim and Janina. You know that Tim and Janina have a short person who's about to escape for college, but we're not going to forget that the bedroom still needs to exist. Even if we're selling after he leaves, because he's still going to be coming back and forth, right? So bedroom for him, bedroom for Cameron. And honest conversation, when we went shopping back in 2009, and Nate, we're at the closing, and Nate's like, you should get your license. It was for the house that we're in right now. And part of that process was my wife had just lost her younger brother. He passed away while traveling in Europe. So I said to her that night when we finished crying, your parents are moving over here. My wife's Australian. So I had a 10,000-mile buffer zone. It was awesome. It's over now, but it was awesome. And sure enough, we went back to Australia. We had to repatriate Jay's body from France. It was a horror show. And we're at dinner like night number 2 in Sydney. And my father-in-law and my mother-in-law put down their cutlery. They're like, so we've been talking. And I turned to my wife, I'm like, told you, right? So they are in the house with us. So we needed, we knew we wanted financially to go about it a certain way. And we also, everybody would love a big, huge house, but we knew what we needed. And we were lucky enough to find something that the family that owned it started to build out. It was sort of reversed. The Saunders lived upstairs where Janina and the boys and I live. And they were building out, they started boning out downstairs for their daughter and 2 grandsons. So we flipped that, went in. Some of the stuff they were doing was super clunky. What they were making the master bedroom, we made their kitchen. So they have garden style walkout downstairs. So from the street, it looks like a ranch, but when you go out back, it looks like a 2-story house. And it's perfect for us. We knew exactly what we were looking for. And Janina's super dorked out. And by the time we went shopping with Nate, we knew we were looking in Litchfield, Andover, Stratford, and maybe one more town, because we were super clear about the fact that we wanted a great IEP for Cameron, who's autistic and diabetic, right? Absent that, we just have to keep asking questions. So if the Lindsays show up, well, who else is living there? Like finding out, do they need a legal in-law and because you wouldn't have looked at where we are now and realized it's almost like a legal in-law, because if I play my cards right, thank God, I don't see my in-laws that much. Completely separate living quarters. They have their own furnace. Like we manage the whole house, but they have their own kitchen. Like I did not want to be sharing, butter and peanut butter with my old people. I love them to death. Yes, they made my wife, but beyond that, I would like separation of quarters. So just start to ask questions, stay curious. Like, what are you looking for? Who else is moving with you? And if they're children of a certain age, Would they work out in the same bedroom, or do you want to solve that crime now and make sure they have their own space? And just keep asking questions. What about, are you worried about being on a cul-de-sac where there's planned traffic? Are you okay on a through street? Is a main road okay? You just keep asking questions. It'll come through pretty quickly. And they'll have an image in their mind, and usually, and this is gonna shock nobody, we have to walk them back. Because everybody's dream house, for a lot of people, has gotten outside of the grasp of what they can probably pull off, right? Because I know what I would like. And I also know I have, like, tuition coming up and, yeah, just that. Yeah, but honestly, Derek, again, great question. That's probably one of the best parts of our job. Is they're not showing up with an order in their hand. You help them build that. That's super cool. And you're gonna help them discover all that, because as I was saying before, we think about the average American, it's like, oh, it's gonna be, maybe white craftsman, farmer's porch, wrap around, there's a pool, like, so we say pool, we think everyone wants a pool. You know who doesn't want a pool? Younger people with short kids that could drown, and old people because they don't want the maintenance. Right? There's that sweet center, and only some people still want it. How many times we are looking at stuff, and and obviously you would add the pool if they're looking for it, but so more often than not, people don't want to deal with that, or they do, or they're willing. But like we in our head think, well, somebody would obviously want all these things, and that's why we just stay curious and keep asking questions. If you have both decision makers there, you might be finding out in real time they're not on the same page. Also fun, right? But you just keep asking questions, and you have all the time in the world to do that, because it doesn't take that long. And then you might start to send them properties, and they're like, oh, actually, this is way off. This isn't what we're looking for. You said private lot, and we pictured like steel fence. You just meant mature growth trees. Yeah, that's what I meant, right? Because and in Stratford, I have the Dows on this side, and I don't even know Mark's last name. Mark's on this side, and Joe and Pam Dow are on this side. And we're here, and the street's that way, and the woods are that way. And our houses are probably just as far apart as my parents' house in Chelmsford is from the neighbors that I grew up around. But our house is on the very back of a 2-acre lot. So it's a big, long strip with a big, ridiculous long driveway, which I love paying to have plowed, or snow blowing, right? But in the grand scheme of things, that offers the privacy, right? That's super private, We went quite a while before we bothered with window treatments, because nobody's gonna be in the street looking into our house, So it was super private, but none of that was a concern. It was a benefit that showed up. We were just looking for the house that made sense for what our family was about to become. But I think if you stay curious, just keep asking questions, they'll figure it out. They probably know, they just might not have verbalized it. And again, they might not have shared that. She has an idea, he has an idea. So what else we got for questions? We're gonna do Win the Cellar. That is on Friday. Yeah, I think that's it. Appreciate it, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks, Tim.
Take care.
Thank you.
You got it.